Welcome to Mock 10 Sports. Glad you could join us on this segment. Got a special guest today, Ross Dellenger, college football writer for Sports Illustrated. Ross, I appreciate you joining us today, man. How's everything going?
Good, man. Good. How are you?
Doing well, brother. Doing well. So you were in Knoxville last weekend, huh?
I was. It
Just, just,
was it was incredible.
just all right. Give us some. How was it? Give us from start to finish. How'd the day end? Was it? First of all, do you think Tennessee was going to win that game?
Uh well, it was one of those things where I picked Alabama to win straight up and I picked Tennessee to cover. So I didn't have a real good confidence level and when you do something like that where you pick the underdog to cover but the favorite to win.
Yeah.
And of course, it didn't happen. I should have just like picking Tennessee to cover. I should have just picked Tennessee to win because I thought that they very much could. I didn't really expect them to score 52 points on Nick Saban's defense. Most points against a Saban coach team since he was at Michigan State. It's crazy. But the day was incredible, man. I stayed in downtown Knoxville. I was actually in Knoxville for almost a week, preparing for that game and kind of writing a story about the resurrection of Tennessee football and all that. So I was there for about 5 days and got to see the build up to the big day. And it was an incredibly beautiful day. You know, it was like 70 and sunny and an awesome game, right? Back and forth, quarterbacks going back and forth, just tremendous. And then the post game scene was probably, um, one of the most energetic, enthusiastic, loudest, craziest, whatever adjective you want to use that I've ever been a part of. It was wild.
Could you get a feel just from being there? You said you were there pretty much a week before the game, prior to the game. Did you get a feel sense that Tennessee really believed that, hey, we can actually play with these guys this year? Like the 15 years before that, be damned.
Yeah, there was some real confidence. It was, and you ended up finding out a little later that the administration had a lot of confidence because they did some things preparing for like a field storming. They had like a whole plan, so they were they were kind of prepared for that to happen. That team has a lot of confidence. Anytime you can score somewhat at will or kind of yeah, whenever you want, anytime you can move the ball like they do and do it quickly, you have confidence. It reminds me actually of the 2019 LSU team with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Jefferson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They could really kind of, if they wanted to score and they wanted to score quickly, sure seemed like they could do it whenever they wanted to. And Tennessee seems like that. And I know Alabama's defense has some holes, but still Nick Saban defense, still full of 4 and 5 stars. And for them to do what they did, pretty impressive.
So you think this team's similar to 2019 LSU? You think just offensively?
Offensively, it has some traits. It has some traits. You think about it. You've got, Ed Orgeron is in his third year, but Josh Heupel's in his second year. You got a quarterback who's a transfer in his second year, who kind of burst onto the scene a little bit, like midway through last year, kind of like Joe Burrow did. You've got a set of receivers, right? Jalen Hyatt, Brew McCoy, maybe similar in skill to the Jamar Chases and the Jeffersons. And then, you just have their aggressiveness passing the football. And we saw that against Alabama, kind of the no fear, throw over the middle, throw on, first down all the time. I mean, they're throwing downfield. I mean, Jalen Hyatt had the 5 touchdowns, and I think 3 of them were 40 plus yards. It was like a 78 yarder. I mean, they throw downfield. Now defensively, I don't think they're probably as strong as that 2019 LSU team, and that's what will have to be tested. That's what's going to be tested this year. Certainly, is that defense. Can they? Because Alabama scored 49 points, and a lot of teams this year scored on Tennessee. So that's going to be the real issue for them. I think is stopping folks.
Just what are your thoughts so far, just going into Week 8, just in the league in itself? Just besides, we talked to about Tennessee for a little bit. Just the rest of the league. What's some initial thoughts you've had just going into Week 8?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Tennessee's the. I don't think anybody expected Tennessee to be 6-0 right now. I don't know how many people expected Ole Miss to be 7-0. So there's some surprising teams right now in the SEC that have kind of shake things up. Probably after the Florida State game, many people would have not expected LSU to be 5-2 right now
Hmm.
with wins at Auburn and in Florida. So that's interesting to watch. A big game, obviously this week with Ole Miss going down to Tiger Stadium. I can remember that game. Well, that game always every year down there, especially in a night game in Tiger Stadium, is a blast. I think it's an afternoon kick, but that'll be one that. And you saw the line move on that one, and I think there's a reason why there. LSU started to play really well, and I think that there's some confidence there that wasn't there a few weeks ago. So
Because
that's
that
that's interesting. And in the opposite there, of all the teams that have been good surprises, you've got a Texas A&M team, a team like Texas A&M that has really struggled in Arkansas. That is at 4-3. I probably didn't expect those teams to be there.
What with your opinion, just talking about LSU, where they're at right now. Obviously, they got a big win at Florida this past weekend. Looked bad 2 weeks ago against Tennessee. But realistically, if LSU wins this game this week against Ole Miss, as you mentioned, they have a bye week. And then when Alabama comes to town, if Alabama handles business against Mississippi State this week, LSU is essentially trying to lock up the SEC West that weekend. If they won that game, if they beat Ole Miss this week, they would have had the head-to-head with Ole Miss, and then Bama would have 2 conference losses and have a 2-game lead over there. Crazy, crazy to think about after the Tennessee game, the Florida State game to open up the year. LSU wins this weekend, they legitimately get to go play for the West in their own backyard.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's kind of rolled into my head lately. That wow, LSU actually, because we've seen some flaws with Alabama. It's like, man, do they actually have a shot here to do this and get to Atlanta? It's certainly possible. I'm probably going to end up covering that LSU Alabama game too down there. So we'll see. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with what the Ole Miss LSU result is, but it is crazy to see LSU. They have really struggled to pass the ball downfield. Jane Daniels seems to do the one read and then run, and so they've had struggles passing the ball, and apparently the medicine for struggles offensively is to go play Florida, because we've seen a lot of teams really have success against Florida after that season opener against Utah. The Gators have really struggled, and LSU just lit it up. And now you got confidence going in your receivers and Jane Daniels, and he's not only running now. The defense has always been there. Defense has played pretty well all year, except maybe that Tennessee game.
Yep.
They played pretty solid. So there is a real shot. I mean, I'll be honest. We haven't picked games yet, but it would actually kind of surprise me if LSU lost that game to Ole Miss. I mean, it really would. It just feels like that is going to be a difficult one for the Rebels to pull out. And yeah, it sets up a pretty significant showdown on November 5th in Tiger Stadium. I don't know if they picked a time for that game, but that's the same weekend as Georgia hosts Tennessee. So that game will almost certainly be an afternoon, which means LSU and Alabama at night in Tiger Stadium, and that's going to be really interesting.
No, you're 100% right. That it'd be interesting to see what time they made that game because, like you said, you got 2 big division games going on that same day on November 5th.
Yep, and sometimes CBS picks I think they have a daytime doubleheader they get, and then they have a nighttime doubleheader. And you know what? I've forgotten. I think they've already had one of the doubleheaders already.
They did. Yep, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was the
It,
daytime
wa-
doubleheader,
it,
or
wa-
they
no,
have
it was
noon and three, or
You had Auburn, Georgia in the afternoon, Bama A&M at night.
that's what you
Okay. So they
had.
did the nighttime doubleheader.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't remember what they picked for the daytime doubleheader. So that's going to be it's going to be interesting. But either way, it's crazy that the old SEC West could come down to LSU and Alabama, given how this season started.
Now, in your opinion, how good is Ole Miss? I know they're 7-0. Schedule hadn't been great. What's your thoughts through 7 weeks with the Rebels?
Yeah, I went down there. I saw Ole Miss play Kentucky, and they really came across defensively as pretty impressive in that game. Now I didn't. I remember leaving that game thinking, is Ole Miss's defense really good, really salty, or is Kentucky's offensive line just really bad? And it might be more the latter, given the latest things that have happened. Almost kind of have struggled a little bit defensively against Vanderbilt, and definitely struggled against Auburn. So there seems to be some struggles all of a sudden defensively with that team. But hey, leave it to Lane; they can score points, right? 48 points against Auburn, 52 Vanderbilt. I think it's like the fourth or fifth time this year they've scored over 40 points. So they can put some points up. But you're right. Do we really know? Like, if you look at Ole Miss's schedule, there's a quality win with Kentucky, but
Hmm.
outside of that, there's no other quality wins. So, and that's the case for a lot of teams early in the season. I mean, Michigan is their schedule is not that great, and Ohio State, their schedule is not that great. So you've got that from a few teams where you're just kind of scratching your head saying, I don't know how good they are, but I think we'll find out a lot this weekend in Tiger Stadium.
So fast forward to Atlanta. We're in December. Who's playing in Atlanta? Who's representing the East and West, in Ross Dellenger's opinion?
Well, it's hard to see. I'll do the East first. It's hard to see Tennessee going on the road, and Georgia allowing 40 points a game to Tennessee, Georgia's defense. I can't see it happening. Um, it would be fun. It'd be a great story for the Vols to return to Atlanta for the first time since I think 2007. Uh, I think it's going to be Georgia at the end of the day, representing the East, like kind of we all thought.
Yeah.
That's just the feeling I get. As far as the West, again, I hate to go with the preseason favorites, but I do see Alabama going 11-1 and winning the West, and then that really kind of sets up an interesting situation
Hmm.
because you actually could have Alabama at 11-1 playing Georgia 12-0 with Tennessee 11-1 sitting back, and you wonder if the situation falls right, if all that happens, in Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, the selection committee is going to have a real big problem. They're going to have to decide. They're probably not going to put all three in the playoff. That would be insane, and they just wouldn't do that. Even if they think it's probably warranted, I don't think they would do that. But they probably would feel pressure to put two in there. Certainly, the SEC champion, if that happens, Alabama would go, and then don't you got to put in the team that beat Alabama? So I think it probably would be Tennessee. So it's fascinating to think about. Of course, we're a long way from that happening, but hey, it's a possibility.
Or do you go with the head-to-head? Georgia won. They're the Eastern Division rep too. Like you said, there could be a. I think I'm like you. Tennessee would probably have the best overall win. Not probably, they would. But the two teams, Georgia and Tennessee, would have played. Georgia won the division. I think in that situation, they'd probably get the nod.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably depends on also how the games go.
Yeah.
If Tennessee gets really blown out at Georgia, that kind of probably changes things. And if Alabama, really blows out Georgia in the SEC championship game, that probably changes things. So I think it probably depends on
Ross, what about this
how
here?
the games go.
What if Ole Miss 11-1 only losses to Alabama? Ole Miss, I think, would be they wouldn't have a great quality win. It'd probably be this weekend. Honestly, if they were going 11-1, their only loss was to Alabama. It'd probably or Kentucky, depending on how Kentucky finishes, or hell, Mississippi State's so Jekyll and Hyde. It's tough to say, but by that point, that could be a solid win too. But yeah, Ole Miss, I think, would probably be. Ole Miss has to go win the SEC to get in the playoff, in my opinion. Crazy to say, sitting at 7-0, but I'm like you. The strength of schedule. Not trying to sound like we're talking RPI basketball, but yeah, I'm like you. I don't think they would get the nod at 11-1 if Tennessee's still sitting there too at 11-1.
No, right. That would be surprising, especially if, in this scenario, Ole Miss loses to Alabama and Tennessee having beaten Alabama. Yeah, the Rebels would have to go to Atlanta and win.
Ross, last thing before we let you go, brother. I saw I saw you retweeted it. The 12-team playoff, if we ended today, Clemson would be the 1 seed, Tennessee the 2 seed, Ohio State the 3, and the UCLA from the Pac-12, the top 4 seeds, getting by, sitting at those college football playoff sites, waiting from those on-campus results. First game, who would you have in Oxford, Ole Miss, Oregon?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think I would go with Ole Miss, but only probably because the home field, and that's why it's so important that 8-9. The seeding, and I do this every week. I use the playoff expansion model that was adopted. That's going to start probably in 24 or 25, and that's a real issue every week is who of the 8-9 seed gets that home field. Who do you put 8? Who do you put 9? Because the margin between them probably is very small. I would give the nod to the Rebels winning that one.
All right, so we got Ole Miss advancing to play Clemson, the 1 seed. Moving down to that bracket, you got 5 seed Georgia playing Tulane at home. Wait for a right to go play UCLA at the Rose Bowl. Who you got?
Tulane, man. Yeah, Tulane, the AAC. Actually, I got
Rep.
that wrong on there. I have AAC at large. It's supposed to be AAC champion. But Georgia certainly wins that one, goes to the Rose Bowl. I probably then think Georgia advances all the way. Probably beats UCLA, even though that's a rare home quarterfinal for the Bruins.
All right, so we'll stay on this side of the bracket. You got Georgia beating UCLA, Ole Miss, Clemson, in Miami.
Yeah, I would take Clemson there to win. I think Clemson would win that one. Probably not handedly though. That would be a fun game.
So we got Clemson, Georgia in Atlanta. Who you rolling with to go to LA for the chance to go to the national championship?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Georgia. I'm gonna say that the 5th seed comes out, and this is probably one of the issues with the expansion proposal that was adopted is that Georgia, because they didn't win the conference championship, they don't get one of those first round buys. They automatically get moved to the 5th seed. In reality, they're probably the 2nd or 3rd seed, right? Maybe even the top seed in this bracket. And so I think they do. They beat Clemson and they go play for the championship.
I agree with you. In this format, you're going to have some strong 5 seeds, I think, here at some point being at large bids. Moving to the other side, so we got the 2 buys sitting at the Sugar Bowl, Tennessee. Other side, we got the Cotton Bowl, the 3 seed Ohio State. So let's go to the TCU Alabama matchup in Fort Worth. Winner advances to play Tennessee. Who you got?
Yeah, I would go to Alabama to quote upset TCU. Although I'm sure that game from Vegas would not be an upset. But that's
from a seeding standpoint, it's an upset. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I would go Alabama, and then there's the rematch, right?
Yep. All right. Who'll be advancing in the rematch in the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans?
Yeah, I would go that Alabama gets Tennessee in the neutral site rematch down in the Sugar Bowl.
All right. So we got Bama advancing to the semis. All right. Michigan, Wake Forest in Ann Arbor. Winner gets Ohio State.
Oh, it's going to be cold up there. The Demon Deacons, they're not used to that cold, that mid-December in the big house. So give me Michigan, and then hey, look at here, another rematch. And that's the problem also with the 12-team playoff. You have so many, you are going to have rematches.
Ohio State, Michigan. So it looks like we'd have Ohio State winning the regular season matchup. Does Michigan get revenge on Ohio State to advance to the semis?
I don't think so. I think Ohio State beats them. So yeah, it'd be Ohio. It would shock, big surprise, right? It'd be Ohio State, Alabama.
Who you got?
Probably Ohio State. I think it would be Ohio State, Georgia. Yeah.
And then right now we're going to Week 8. Who's your national champion? Ohio State, Georgia, in LA.
I'll say Ohio State. Again, we don't know a whole lot about them, right? Because they haven't played. I think they have 0 quality wins so far. Notre Dame is not helping them at all. But I have confidence in them and their offense and everything. So yeah, give me the Buckeyes to right now in my expansion bracket to win it all.
Perfect, brother. That was a fun exercise. I appreciate you stepping on, hanging out with us today. You have a safe one. Everybody, you want to give him a follow at Ross Dellenger on Twitter. Always breaking news on college football. One of the best out there from that standpoint. Ross, I appreciate you joining us, brother.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. Thanks, man.
Keep following us on Mach 10 Sports for the best information on SEC sports.